Hello, everybody, and welcome to this all-new episode of the Fairfax Sports Report. I'm your host, Monica Moore, and as usual, we have a great show for you tonight, focusing on a lot of the spring sports going on from around the region. But before we get to all of that, we want to thank the folks that help make this program possible. Our good friends at CCI Screen Printing for all of your screen printing needs at 703-978-0257. Also, don't forget that you can get copies of this program as well as copies of the games that we produce from throughout the region at Pressbox Video, www.pressboxvideo.com. Special thanks to our spring sponsors, Triple Edge Lacrosse. For your endless summer of lacrosse, you can contact Triple Edge at 703-392-6177. Don't forget to check out our website where we have scores, news, and updates from around the region, as well as our video vault feature where you can see interviews with players and coaches and highlights from events that we've been at from throughout the region. Don't forget that you can become a fan of the Fairfax Sports Network on our Facebook page. And finally, if you have any news, notes, story ideas, complaints, questions, please feel free to email us at news@fairfaxsportsnetwork.com. We promise we do read all of the things that you send us. Well, before we jump into the spring sports, a couple of news and notes. First of all, a belated congratulations to Chip Vaughn. He was selected by the New Orleans Saints in the 4th round. He was the 16th pick. Of course, he is a former Robinson standout. People from the region know his name. His senior year, he had 83 tackles. He was all district, all region, all state, all everything. Had an outstanding career at Wake Forest and now is going on to realize his dreams of playing in the National Football League. Also, definitely want to send out some congratulations to the Westfield crew team. They've certainly caught my attention. They had their best day ever a couple of weeks ago at the Alaquia Regatta on the Occoquan. They entered 10 boats in the event. All 10 of the boats made it into the finals, so they are certainly looking very good going into the state championships, which are going to be held this weekend. Coming up, they're also going to be on the Occoquan, so good luck to all the Northern Region teams in that event. Well, as usual, I'm delighted to be joined in the studio by Dennis Stewart, our area lacrosse expert. Welcome, Dennis.
Great to be here. And we had another fast-paced, furious action week of lacrosse.
Well, you know, Dennis, despite the rain, a lot of the teams toughing it out, playing in not optimal conditions, getting on through these district tournaments, and lots of great lacrosse going on.
Not to mention tournaments have been moving to play on turf. Dates have been changed. New arrangements, make plans, change plans, get it in.
So we're going to get to all the scores that we have from throughout the region. And in fact, we have an updated score from one of the games going on tonight that we'll get to. So stay tuned for that. But before we go through some of the games, we want to show you our Triple Edge boys lacrosse rankings so you can see where things ended up pretty much based on the conclusion of the regular season.
A little bit of change at the top. Chantilly moves back into the top spot. They've got the big seed with #1 against Westfield on Friday at home for Coach Kevin Braddock. So that's a big step there. Langley, #1 in Liberty. Coach Brewer, he'll play the Madison team tonight, who won tonight, and they'll play at Marshall on the turf. He's got Alex Devlin really playing well for him with 33 goals and 22 assists. Madison in the #3 spot with Coach of the Year, Rich Hodge, and Will Sobolski getting it done. He's got 21 goals and 21 assists. #4, Coach Fitzgerald at Woodson. Steve Montgomery playing tough D. Tyler Stelwack doing a great job at the midfield. Robinson, they'll be the #3 seed in the Concord district in the regionals. They'll play Woodson in the first round in what will make an exciting first round game. Oakton at #6, they'll be the #4 seed in the Concord district. They'll play the winner of the Liberty district tournament in the first round of regionals. West Springfield, we've got a lot more coming up on the Spartans. They're playing for the #1 seed in the Patriot against #8 Annandale. Annandale comes in the #2 seed for Coach Maglesko, and they'll be playing Friday night at West Springfield, which is another change. #10, Herndon, their season's done. They had a great year. They had that tough 4-5 matchup in the Concord district and were eliminated, but they had a super season.
So as you said it, Dennis, tons of great lacrosse going on, and you did mention that we have a lot today on the West Springfield Spartans with Coach Scott Setter on the phone. So, Coach, can you hear us?
Yes, I can.
Well, Coach, congratulations on your season so far, and you guys are coming up on another big district tournament game. Now, I know that you played Annandale during the regular season. You won 8-5. What are the big things you're focusing on going into this game?
Well, we did win the first game 8-5, like you said, and the big thing is what we want to do is really not focus on what we did in the past. That game happened a month or so ago. I want the guys to focus on the game at hand and not that we beat them in the past. Annandale's a very dangerous team. They're a young team. They're filled with a bunch of sophomores that are very talented, very aggressive, very fast. And as they've gone through the season, they've matured and become a much better team.
Coach, as I watch your attack, Dennis Stewart here, I see Hunter Bragg go to the goal and create a little bit. I see Corey McCrae kind of play off on the side and play off of it. Is that by design?
Part of it's by design, but a lot of it's based upon the talent and experience we have back there playing attack. Hunter, as you know, is a great one-on-one player, and this allows the other 5 offensive players on the field to work within the system, and they're able to find seams and openings, and Hunter's able to find them on the field. We've been fortunate to be very balanced to attack this year. Both Corey and Hunter both have scored over 30 goals and each have about 13 or more assists. We've also received some great contributions from a sophomore, Zach Hart, who kind of came into the season. We weren't really sure where he was going to fit, but due to injuries, kind of slid right into our starting attack role, and he scored 20 goals on the season and has complemented Hunter and Corey real well.
Coach, did I see Eric Schauter out there on attack a little bit the other night?
Yeah, Eric's a great talent. Eric's been around for a while, and a lot of guys in the region know him. He's a real versatile player for us. Played midfield last year on the varsity level. He was originally slated to start at attack this year, but we had some early injuries in the season, and utilizing his versatility, we were able to slide him back to midfield, and that allowed us to get Zach in an attack. He's moved back to attack now that we're healthy, and he's really gelled real quickly with Corey and Hunter back there, and we feel that our 3 attackmen give us a really good balance and complement each other real well. Each of them has a very different playing style, which helps us be a little bit creative on offensive sets.
Well, Coach, speaking of players who've been shuffled around a little bit, I know that Andy McGregor was, earlier on in his career, he was at the attack position. He was moved to goalkeeper as a junior. He's having an outstanding career, I think, as a goalkeeper. I read that his save percentage is about 71% shots saved. Can you talk a little bit about the work that he's been doing back there in the goal and what you've seen from him this year?
Absolutely. Andy's always enjoyable to talk about. It's funny, every time we talk about the West Springfield Spartans, regardless if it's in the break room or talking to a newspaper or media, Andy's name always comes up, and I don't think that's by coincidence. Like you said, his sophomore year, he was on the varsity team as an attack and midfielder. He definitely would be starting at a short stick position this year for us and be a value to us on the offensive side of the ball. But very unselfishly decided to switch to goalie after his sophomore year during the summer. Really worked hard in the off-season at developing the skills of a goaltender. We lost our senior goaltender that year, and he really wanted to step in and make the team better, not worrying about his personal interest at that time. He's worked hard during the off-season and the regular season. Like you said, he's got a save percentage of 71% this year. He's allowed 4.2 goals against within the last 15 games. He's also scored 2 goals. He's played attack for the first 2 years, like you said, which really comes out sometimes. And sometimes with the coach, he gets a little bit of a heart attack on the sideline when you see him running out of the cage and the attack mentality comes out of him and he's charging downfield. But in practice, it's funny. He's one of our best dodgers as an offensive threat. He probably has one of the top 5 shots on the team with his goalie stick. And he's not afraid to take it downfield, which is really, really fun and enjoyable to watch. He works as hard, if not harder, than every other player on our team during the season and during the off-season. He's been fun to coach and a real enjoyment to watch.
Coach Shooter's got that nasty face dodge, like you said, and he's right into that quick strike clear for you guys. That really is a tremendous asset, isn't it?
Absolutely. We have 3 very talented and athletic poles that are back there with Andy, which really allow us to do some things with our transition from defense to offense. Like you said, Andy can fire the ball out there for transition really quick, get it out to one of our middies, or our poles can carry up, and it's really been a blessing for us. We've really been fortunate that regardless of who Andy throws it to, they're comfortable with taking it upfield.
Coach, speaking of that defense, your two top defenders are so different. You know, Sean Phelan is like a surgeon out there with a scalpel, and A.J. White's out there with a bludgeon. Why don't you talk about those two guys a little bit?
Yeah, Sean and A.J. are both tremendous players, and along with T.J. O'Connell, I think, in my opinion, form one of the better defenses in the region. Sean's a senior, like you said, leads the team with over 100 ground balls a season. He's a very smooth player, like you said, kind of like a surgeon, has an array of stick checks. He's happy to run with the attackman as he's covering them and just kind of throw little jabs in there every once in a while, and eventually he's going to get the ball from you. Where, like you said, A.J. is a different mentality. He's going to fire right out at you. He's going to use his aggressiveness and his physicality on the field. He's really worked on his footwork and his positioning this season, and he's become one of the best poles in the district. They're very different styles, and I think it makes it challenging and interesting for an opposing offense how to attack those two.
How do you decide who to match them up with?
Well, Sean usually covers the quicker of the attackman on the opposing team, and A.J. usually takes their second-best attackman at this point. We use Sean's experience. He's been on the field for 4 years with us right now. And really at that time, we tell them if they run through a pick situation and we have a switch, then we're comfortable with all three of those guys taking anybody's opposing attackman. So that's how we start off, and if we switch to the game, we're comfortable with all those guys.
Coach, every time I talk to a coach, they always say, everyone on the team contributes. It's definitely true. When you open your stat book, you see that there's something in there for everyone. You have so many players on your team, not just making a contribution, making a huge contribution. Who are some of the people on your team that you feel like the media doesn't focus on as much, but you really feel like are just huge contributors?
Well, one that jumps out to my mind is Coonley. He's a senior midfielder for us. He starts on the wing for the majority of our face-offs. He's very explosive, very quick. He started playing lacrosse during high school, so sometimes the stick skills are not the top in the district or the top on the team, but his quickness and athleticism has made him become one of the better defensive midfielders we have on our team. He's really worked on receiving the ball and outlet passes from Andy and helps us get that downfield threat. Reese Mullins is another midfielder that we have that's really stepped up this year. He got second team All-District. And that's after missing 4 games. He actually missed our spring break tournament. But he's really worked hard, along with Chris Fletcher and Lee Gleason have made it a very, very athletic and fast second midfield line for us. Our first midfield line is great. They're all seniors. Ben Myers, Hayden Angelo, and Mike Berry all complement each other very well. They've played together now for 3 or 4 years, and they've really worked together very well. They can anticipate each other's moves, which is really nice to see on the field.
Coach, that's a lot of depth that really does let you move Shouter back to attack, doesn't it?
Absolutely. We wouldn't be able to do it if we didn't have the midfielder depth we have. And Eric's, like I said, one of those versatile players where we can plug him in where we need to. We could probably throw him in a pole if we need to, and he'd get the job done back there.
Hey, Coach, if you need me to testify for that tough little defensive midfielder, number 11, I'll do it because he is tough as nails.
I appreciate that.
Well, Coach, thank you so much for joining us. We wish you the best of luck throughout the season.
Absolutely. I appreciate you guys having us on.
Thanks. Good luck on Friday, Coach.
I appreciate it. Bye-bye.
So, Dennis, that's certainly one of the big games we'll be previewing a little later on in the show. Lots of big ones coming up. But certainly West Springfield, the season not over, but they have been very impressive so far.
Very. That's a deep team. When you got in the Patriot All-District team, they had 2 attackmen make the first team, 2 defensemen make the first team, 2 midfielders make the first team, and their goalie. So they definitely are the class of the district right now.
Well, we've been talking about some of those games that have been happening despite the weather, so we want to talk about some of the games that we've picked out as our games of the week, show you some of the scores, what's been going on in some of the districts. And here, Dennis, starting off with the Concord District, they did have their semifinals yesterday, and certainly Oakton Chantilly, I think a lot of people had money on Chantilly there, but Westfield Robinson, you'd certainly call that an upset.
A little bit of an upset there. Alex Kawchuk, the goalie for Westfield, played outstanding. That combination of Morton and Adler at the face-off disrupted Daniel McNulty a little bit for the Rams. That's a little bit of a surprise. Now, the Chantilly 7-3 score, that strong Chantilly defense, no surprise there.
Well, and certainly one thing for Westfield, those players have not beaten Robinson at the varsity level during their career. So I think that's got to give them a lot of confidence going in against Chantilly coming up on Friday. Certainly Eric Alter having a great season. He had a hat trick, and one of the big things people were talking about that game is he had 2 shots from over 20 yards out, which is really hard to do, as you well know.
No question.
With that type of accuracy. So he's certainly someone in the region that people really have their eyes on right now. He's been so consistent.
I also think the face-off against McNulty, tying up McNulty, was definitely a key to that game.
And McNulty having his stellar day, he had 3 goals as well, but just not enough to overcome Westfield. I feel like Westfield has a lot of momentum right now. They're going to need it going up against Chantilly. And Chantilly, it's just such a great thing. I mean, they lost all of those players last year, and they've had so many step up this year. People talked a lot coming into the season about Kagaris, about Gambos, but it was another player in that game that really had the outstanding day. Maris Gallegos had a couple of goals, couple of assists that was huge for the Chargers.
This team offensively is deep, and they want to be able to attack you from any number of places. And I think that that attack may be a little bit underrated.
All right, well, let's go through and take a look at a couple of other games. We did mention to you that we do have an upcoming score update from a game that happened earlier today. Dennis, I'll let you do the honors. You already talked about during the rankings this Woodson-Madison matchup, so tell us what you've heard happened.
Madison wins 15-13 in an outstanding game. The attack for Madison of Sobolski, Hayden, and now Gordon Bailey really played well out there and did a great job.
And then previewing some of the district finals coming up on Friday. We talked about this Westfield-Chantilly matchup. Westfield certainly has a lot of momentum coming in. During football season, we do our Who Do You Have winning segment. So, Dennis, I'm going to ask you for each of these, Westfield versus Chantilly, who's got the edge?
I think I've got to go with the Chargers. They're the number 1 seed. They won during the regular season. I'm going to go with the Chargers.
Well, and the other thing about Chantilly, too, is they have that streak going on where they haven't lost to a public school in quite some time, at least over the past 2 years. They're only lost this year to St. Albans. So it's kind of hard to bet against the Chargers when you have that type of winning streak backing you up.
Exactly. That's tough to go against. They're in the Annandale West Springfield game in the Patriot District. It's going to be at West Springfield. It's going to be a close game. I got to take the Spartans in a very tight one.
That one, I agree. It's a tough call. Of course, West Springfield, as we mentioned when we were talking to Scott Setter, did win during the regular season. It's a little hard to bet against them, particularly that depth that we've been talking about so much, Dennis. Even when one player has an off night, there's so much to step up and so many players who can take over.
That senior class is the heart of that team, from Shooter to McCray to the midfielders. That group of seniors, I think, is going to carry them over against a very, very good Annandale team. But I think they're getting just a little bit, they're a little younger.
And then finally, let's talk about the National District Final. Mount Vernon getting the win over Yorktown. They'll face off against Falls Church. And Dennis, what do you think about the National District Final?
I'm going to bet this is going to be a 1 or 2 goal game is what I'm going to do there. And I'm not sure who's going to take it. Mount Vernon, most of their games have been 8-7, 9-8. The Falls Church semifinal was 21-17. So I'm not sure who's going to take that, and I'm not sure, and I don't think it's going to be more than a 2-goal game.
Completely agree with you, and history is on your side. During the regular season, Falls Church got the win 12-11 in overtime, so I think a lot of people expecting for that one to be a barn burner again, so a lot of eyes on that one because it's too tough to call at this point.
I can't call it either.
Well, we've been talking about some of these district finals coming up. A lot of the districts having their meetings announcing their all-district teams. So we want to go through and congratulate some of the district players of the year that have been announced. The Concord hasn't announced yet, but the Liberty District, first of all, Dennis, 2 players, not from the teams that we talk about during the rankings so much, but Stefan Kowalski from Thomas Jefferson getting the Offensive Player of the Year, and then one of my favorites, Ed Reed from South Lake on the defense, getting Defensive Player of the Year.
Both very talented players, both from not necessarily the first tier of teams there. I think a lot of those teams go in, they're banging heads against each other. Sometimes that third-party candidate sleeps in there. Not that either one of these guys do not absolutely deserve these awards.
Well, and as I said, Ed Reed, very impressed with him. Last week we focused a lot on players who've been under the radar a little bit. Coach Blamey thinks Ed Reed over there is probably one of the best kids that he's ever coached. He's going to be playing next year at Gettysburg College. And South Lakes, Dennis, we haven't talked a lot about them, but they've really done a lot over the past few years to become a very competitive team. Coach Blamey doing a great job. He's got kids like Ed Reed, Will Johnson, who's a really fast midfielder. They have a player over there, Alex Golombieski, who's won 65% of his face-offs. So again, we didn't give them as much discussion this year as some of the other teams, but I think you do have to take notice of what they've done over at South Lakes this year.
They started their season off with a very tough 1-goal loss to Herndon, and I think that helped propel Herndon a little bit and kind of made them struggle a little. But they did an excellent job all year. Like you said, Coach Blamey's doing a great job with that program. Got a chance to coach those guys a couple times in the fall. Very great young men and a lot of fun to be around.
So we're going through a couple more of the district players of the year. We have the National District Offensive and Defensive Players of the Year. Henry Brigham from Washington and Lee, he was on our preseason players to watch list. And then James Hewlett from Falls Church getting Defensive Player of the Year. And then one of your players under the radar from last week, Andrew Sempf, no longer under the radar, getting the Patriot District Player of the Year.
Andrew went into that meeting with 50 goals and 3 assists and was well rewarded for his performances.
Hard not to give it to a player that has those type of numbers backing him up.
Takes you back to Nick Percat when Nick Percat was at Woodson and he had close to 90 points and 40 or 50 goals.
So that's it for the Triple Edge Boys Lacrosse Report for the week. Now we're going to segue into the Triple Edge Girls Lacrosse Report of the week. Some of the girls teams also playing this week, some of the games being moved around. First of all, of course, as always, we'll show you what the Triple Edge Girls Lacrosse rankings look like. And again, a lot of this taking into account what happened in the regular season without what's been happening in the district tournament so far.
Chargers been wire to wire at number 1. They're undefeated. They'll play at home against Robinson on Friday, our number 2 consensus. We'll have more on the Rams in just a little bit. WT Woodson, they beat Madison on March 30th, Megan O'Leary and her team. They've got that top seed there in that district. Madison, the hot team, 6 in a row. Coach Counts, Amanda Counts, voted Coach of the Year in the district. Kelly Wagaman on junior defense playing really well for them. Westfield, yet another overtime loss for the Lady Bulldogs and Coach Jim Dwyer to Robinson in the semifinals. That's been the story of what they've done all season. They'll be the number 3 seed in the Concord. They'll play against the number 2 team in the Liberty in the first round of the regional tournament. Stonebridge will be the number 4 team in the Liberty District. Kristen Howard and her team, they'll have the unenviable position of having to play the number 1 seed coming out of the Concord District in the first round. Langley, they'll be the Liberty number 3. Coach DeSoma and his squad, they'll play the Concord team with the number 2 seeding coming out of that district. Oakton, Concord number 4. Jeannie Counts with her team. As I've always said, never count out the Cougars. Annandale, they're playing their semifinal tonight, even as we speak, against Hayfield, upstart Hayfield, and South County, the number 2 seed in the Concord and the Patriot District, Coach Liz Schaffner. They're playing West Springfield and the Spartans and Coach Pulick's squad.
Well, Dennis, you already alluded to that overtime loss for Westfield. The team that handed them that loss was Robinson, and Coach Allison Noon is joining us on the Fairfax Sports Report hotline. Coach, can you hear us?
Yes, I can.
Well, Coach, congratulations on that phenomenal win. Westfield, a very good team. Your team wins 18-14 in overtime. What did you think your team did well in that game?
We were persistent. I think that was something we focused on. We knew it was going to be a tight game and a tight race, a back-and-forth matchup. And we just never let down. We never let Westfield truly go on a run. Just tried to answer back to everything they did. And that was the big focus. We knew they were a tough team and tough competition, so we had to answer everything back.
Allison, Coach Stewart here. Great to have you on tonight.
Thank you.
Coach, I know you've got some outstanding players. Sam Barber, she's headed to Maryland last year. What is it that makes her such a special player on defense?
She is a smart player on defense. She really tries to read her attackers. She's really confident on the field. She also has a lot of patience. and I think that translates. She's also unique because her stick skills are above and beyond what we tend to get for a lot of defenders. So I think all in all, when she goes up against a lot of the players in the region, her confidence and her poise really helps her out.
And her father's a youth league coach.
Absolutely. He's been coaching her for a while.
Sarah Moody that's headed to Villanova.
Yes.
Tell me a little bit about her game.
Sarah Moody does not know how to stop. She doesn't know how to quit. Everything she does is at 90 miles an hour. If we need the ground ball, if we need the draw control, she's kind of, I always call her my utility player. She's the one who comes up big in a tough situation, and it can be, whatever it is we need, Sarah's there to help us out.
How about Tori Barron going to UConn?
Yeah, absolutely. Fast player, one of our best draw specialists. She's another one who, when the ball needs to get down the field, you want it in Tori's stick. She has an amazing speed. She's able to turn on the jets and just get it down the field right away.
Now, we talked about Megan Dunleavy earlier in the season, and one of the things that we've both been very impressed with is that she's doing a lot of the dirty work as well as being an outstanding player.
Absolutely. I've really worked with Megan this year to get her to understand that while she is a big goal scorer for us, that's not her only job. And there are going to be games where the ball is just not going to hit the net, and we need her to pick up the draws. One of her best games this season was against Westfield the first time around. And, she had the goals, but she had 15 ground balls. And I've never seen a single player get 15 ground balls in a game like that. She's just all heart and hustle. And I tell her a lot of times it is the dirty work that we need more from you than the goals. So she steps up big for us every game.
Now, Coach, coming up, of course, you have the repeat of last year. It's a little bit of deja vu. You've already played Chantilly in the regular season. What are the big things you guys are going to focus on this time and going into this year's district final?
We know Chantilly has some of the top players in this area that we really need to be ready for defensively. I think we're just going to go into it with a defensive mindset of stepping up big, being aggressive, and then in terms of across the field, possession will be huge. Once Chantilly gets a lead, they really like to hold on to it, and they have the ability to hold on to it. So we got to make sure we're always answering back. We're aggressive to get the ball, and we never let down against them.
Coach, this is an awesome senior class that you're losing. Tell me about the young girls who might be making some contribution to the Rams out there.
Absolutely. We've got Sarah's younger sister, Rachel. Rachel Moody is a phenomenal athlete. She has come on strong for us. She had 7 goals in the game against Westfield. And she's a player. She's a junior, but she's our low attacker who at times can come up to the midfield. She's excellent stick skills, and she's come on real strong as the season's progressed. We also have 2 freshmen, Katie McHugh. She has started every game as a freshman this season, and she's another one of those players that I like to call her my sleeper, because when we need a goal and players don't expect a freshman to be the goal scorer, she steps up big and can get a ball in the back of the net. Our other freshman, Campbell Collier, she's a speedy player in the midfield, and she has come on really strong as the season's gone on, become more comfortable and confident with the ball, learned the game, and she's someone who, when we need a draw, her speed is really dangerous. So while we have the seniors, we have youth that have learned a lot from these seniors and taken it all in, really tried to come across big in the game.
Coach, you excited for that field to dry out and maybe get outside and have practice on the grass
that'd
once?
be nice. This district is unfortunate because we only have, one team with turf, so it's really tough. Once Fairfax leaves next year, we're going to be in a little bit of trouble. But, it would be nice to get outside and be able to work on even just a ground ball or two. But these girls have adjusted. They were excited to play in the rain last time, and if we have to do it again, we'll do it again.
Well, Coach, thank you so much for joining us tonight. We wish you guys the best of luck on Friday.
Thank you very much. I appreciate it.
Thanks, Coach. Good luck.
Thanks.
So, Dennis, we just talked about Robinson's really outstanding win over Westfield, and we've talked a lot about Westfield on this program, and all season long, their losses have been these one-goal heartbreaker wins. It's just like one thing here or there could have made their season quite a bit different.
That's team a little bit snake bit, but very talented, and they're going to win one of these eventually.
Well, and there you see Westfield's regular season. They were 8-4. You look at that, they outscored opponents 215 to 153. They averaged about 18 goals per game. And Amanda O'Sullivan, I think she had about 60 of those goals herself. I mean, she's certainly a player that people have taken notice of throughout her career at Westfield. She's been outstanding for Jim Dwyer.
This, again, I don't think I'd want to play this team in the regional tournament. This is a tough, tough team.
And this is a team that's certainly out to prove something. They've had these tough losses. Certainly those things can play into it, the emotion. And so Westfield is definitely someone we're going to be keeping our eyes on as it goes into the regional tournament in the upcoming weeks.
Exactly. And with that matchup between the Concord and Liberty, something's got to give.
Well, like we did with the boys, we're going to highlight a couple of the games of the week that have caught our attention as we've been looking through the scores. And first of all, this T.C. Williams-Hayfield matchup, we talked about it a little bit last week. They had that win. Hayfield had the 7-6 win over T.C. Williams. Then they did it again during the district tournament.
There's nothing wrong with this graphic. That game's actually up there twice. T.C. Williams had gotten on a roll, had done a great job. Jillian Clatcherty, their coach, was voted Patriot District Coach of the Year. They lose their last game and then turn around and lose it again in the district. Hayfield just surprised everybody. Came out of there and beat the better seed.
Well, the one thing we have talked about all year for both boys and girls, consistent across the board, the Patriot District, there's never an easy night there. These teams have a lot of parity, a lot of consistency. There are a lot of one-goal games coming out of the Patriot District.
We've seen so many close games between South County, between West Springfield, between Annandale, and now with Hayfield getting it done. There's a lot of close games there.
Now moving on, we'll move on to the Liberty District and talk about one of the games last night, this Langley-Madison matchup, 14-13. Doesn't get closer than that. Certainly a huge win for the Warhawks.
Again, we talk about how that Madison Warhawk team is just on a roll. This district championship game is going to be exciting on Friday.
And then we've talked about the Westfield Robinson coming out with the big win, 18-14 in overtime. I have to tell you, Dennis, one of the games I'm most excited about is that Robinson-Chantilly matchup again on Friday.
That promises to be quite a matchup, and there's not anything wrong there with that score. Girls lacrosse, you play for 4 minutes, you can get as many goals as you can in an overtime. It's not sudden victory as the boys is.
So in terms of this Robinson-Chantilly matchup coming up, who do you think has the edge in that game?
Chantilly undefeated. They won the first matchup 12-5. I've got to take the Chargers there.
They're averaging about 15.5 goals per game. They have so many weapons. We've talked a lot about Brittany Grail. We've talked about Stillwell. We've talked about Dunwoody. Lots of talent returning off of last year's team that was so phenomenal. And so you have to give the edge to the Chargers, but I'm very impressed with that big win from Robinson, particularly in what they did in overtime. They poured it on. They came out and really played with just a lot of force in that overtime and really made a statement.
And you heard Coach Noon, they were not going to let them get on a run. They stopped Westfield's run and finished it themselves.
Well, taking a look at a couple of games that are upcoming for the girls. First of all, Annandale versus West Springfield. Again, we just said the Patriot District. Both of these are Patriot District matchups that are happening tonight. And the Patriot District, always a good district. If you want to go see a competitive, good lacrosse game, go out to the Patriot District.
I'd look for close scores in this game in the paper tomorrow. No question about it. It'll be interesting to see how Hayfield matches up against South County.
Well, we're going to announce now some of the district players of the year for the Liberty, Patriot, and National Districts. Again, Concord District players of the year have not been released yet, but we do have the players of the year for the other districts. And first of all, Hope Berizzato for Yorktown. She's getting quite comfortable being the district player of the year. She was the field hockey player of the year as well.
When you win 2 of those, that's pretty impressive.
So an outstanding player over at Yorktown. And then for the Patriot District, Meredith Rutherford for Annandale, having a great senior season over there.
Leading the Adams to the championship game again.
And then finally, for the Liberty District, we don't have it up on there. Probably not a huge surprise for people. Maggie Kovacs has had such an impressive career over at Langley, and she was named as the Liberty District Player of the Year.
She's headed off to play at Oregon and to be a Duck. Nothing better than that.
Well, Dennis, as always, thanks so much for joining us and sharing your knowledge from throughout the region.
It was a pleasure to be here. Get out and watch a district championship game. They're going to be very exciting.
Well, we are going to take a quick break, and when we come back, as promised this week, we're going to take you through a lot of the college signings that have recently happened from throughout the region. Back to the Fairfax Sports Report. Well, as I promised last week, now we're going to go through a lot of the recent college signings that have happened throughout the region. Lots of athletes will be continuing on to play at the next level. And first of all, Sammy Spees. Fans of the program know that I am a huge volleyball fan. A lot of people were wondering where Sammy Spees was going to go to play her college volleyball, and the answer is Loyola Marymount in California. You see her numbers there. She was so impressive. 4-year varsity player for Jim Bohr over at Westfield. So congratulations to Sammy. That's a huge achievement for her and for the Westfield program. Now in basketball news, over at Mount Vernon, Janae Jackson is going to be playing at Barton College next year in North Carolina. She averaged 12 points per game, 9 rebounds, 2 steals. Mount Vernon had a great year. Of course, they ran into some injuries as we got into the Northern Region tournament, but an outstanding year for Janae Jackson. We've been talking a lot about lacrosse, and we talked about Maggie Kovacs, the newly named Liberty District Player of the Year. Of course, as Dennis said, she'll be playing at Oregon next year, but a lot of her teammates also going on to play at the next level. Sophie Spivak, Annie Swanson, and Katie Wingo all going to be playing next year in college. Katie Wingo, of course, sticking around, going to Georgetown to play field hockey. And now let's talk a little bit more about basketball, this time with boys basketball. Lots of familiar names for basketball fans. Recently announced Chris Kearney is going to play at Catholic next year, will also be staying in the area. You see his numbers there were extremely impressive. He was the Concord District Player of the Year, and his teammate Peter Scanlon will also be staying in the area, going to Johns Hopkins next year. And finally, Justin May, he was 2 years ago Player of the Year in the Concord District. He will be going to Delaware State. Had a great year this year, including that 30-point effort against Westfield back in February. So congratulations to all of those area boys basketball standouts. And now moving back to some of the girls, lots of volleyball on the list. But first of all, Britt Fruin from Langley, she's going to be going to the Naval Academy to play soccer. She'll report on July 1st for induction day. That's a huge achievement for Britt over at Langley. Will be continuing her soccer career. And then some more volleyball, lots of volleyball signings happening recently. And Celine Alasamaka from Centerville, first of all, going to William and Mary, and Allison and Williams from Chantilly will be going to Villanova. And a special congratulations to Corey Haynes. She becomes the first player from Stuart who will be playing college volleyball. She'll be playing at St. Peter's University in New Jersey. Stuart, of course, has had a program since 2003, so congratulations to Coach Ponton. Congratulations to Corey. Very recently announced Lily Vera from Stonebridge. I talked about her so much during the volleyball season. Everyone knows how impressed I was with her. The great setter from over at Stonebridge announced this week that she will be going to UNC Charlotte. Her signing ceremony will be next Wednesday over at Stonebridge, but you heard it here first that Lily will be playing at UNC Charlotte. And finally, Melissa Mole from Lake Braddock. She is a member, she plays, she's an equestrian, and she will be at South Carolina. Football now, moving on to football, and McLean having a lot of athletes going on, lots of familiar names for Highlander fans. First of all, C.J. Rogers, who led his team in tackles, will be going to Emory and Henry College, and his teammate Michael Shipley joining him there. Michael Shipley was the team MVP. He played both ways, did outstanding things for the Highlanders this year on the football field. And then finally, Kyle McColgan, also in McLean, going to Shenandoah University. McColgan, of course, was injured earlier in the season. He came back to really help out McLean, and certainly good news for him continuing on to play at the next level. And then Uam Ituk from Herndon, I talked about him during our Players to Watch episode. He's certainly an outstanding player for Sean Lanigan. He'll be playing at West Virginia next year. Well, that's it for the college signings. But again, if I did not announce your name, or if you know of any athletes in the region who have had recent college signings, again, please email us at news@fairfaxsportsnetwork.com, because we would love to mention that and congratulate all the area athletes who will be continuing on. Well, last week, we did not get a chance to talk about boys soccer, so after a quick break, we will jump into the boys soccer segment, and I'll let you know what's been happening from throughout the region over the past few weeks. Welcome back to the Fairfax Sports Report. Well, we just finished talking about the college signings, and again, just so impressive how many different athletes are going on to compete at the next level. It seems like every day there's new athletes who are announcing that they're going to be competing next year for various colleges and universities throughout the country. And so again, please do let us know, because we love congratulating the athletes that we've enjoyed watching throughout the past 4 years. Well, as I said, we did not get a chance to talk about boys soccer last week, and so we want to tell you what's been going on throughout the region. And first of all, take a look at our Fairfax Sports Report boys soccer rankings. You see that there has been a little movement. Westfield, very impressive so far throughout the season. In fact, in the DC area, they are leading all teams in goals scored. They've scored 53 goals in 13 games this year. Very outstanding effort for Coach Torres and his team so far. They're going to be playing Fairfax in the first round of the Concord District Tournament. And then you see Robinson there dropping from the #1 spot. Robinson has been very impressive all year long. Of course, the past few games, they've run into some 1-goal wins. They had a big tie with Oakton that we'll talk about in just a little bit. But certainly Robinson, never a team that you can ever count out. People certainly remember what Jack Sakala and his team did last year. And so even though they dropped in my rankings, they're definitely still one of the teams that I feel like are such a huge contender going into the Concord District Tournament, the Northern Region Tournament, and of course the state tournament. No doubt they definitely have the capabilities to make a run like the run that they made last year. Stonebridge holding strong in the #3 spot. I think they've been around that spot almost all year long. Very impressed with them, particularly their defense. You see they're 8-1-1 right now, but their defense really standing out to me. They have one of the best defenses in the region, and that's certainly one thing that people have been talking about with regard to Stonebridge throughout the year. South County holding strong in the #4 position. I've talked a lot about their outstanding goalkeeper, Javier Hernandez, all season long. He's had a number of shutouts for the Stallions. The Stallions are another team when people are talking about team defenses and teams that just really have outstanding standout defenses. South County is a name that comes up. And then finally, Wakefield. Wakefield's a team that I've been very impressed with. I'm going to talk about them a little bit more in a minute to kind of show you what's been going on with them. They certainly have made it up on people's radars. Fernando Castro doing a great job over there with the Wakefield Warriors. Throughout the season, they've definitely had their ups and downs, but I think a lot of people are very impressed with them. And one of the things that caught people's attention was their big matchup with Edison. Edison was a team that's made it to the Washington Post rankings and was undefeated for a while. They had a huge matchup against Wakefield, and Wakefield had a big victory. You see there, Wakefield won 5-1 on April 24th. That was a huge, huge win for them. I think Edison was undefeated up until that point, and then Edison went on to lose to Stewart right after that. So that game kind of put them on a little bit of a spiral, but Edison, a great team as well. Lots of great soccer coming out of the National District. I think a lot of people thought that Yorktown was also going to be a team that was going to be a huge contender. They ran into all of those injuries this year. We talked about Alex Herrera, who was the he's the National District top player as well as Northern Region top player. But Wakefield right now, the class of the district, it seems, in the National District. But you see what happened there. Washington and Lee snuck up on them on April 28th. And so right after that big win against Edison, they stumbled a little bit against Washington and Lee. And then they had a non-district matchup against West Potomac. You see that one ended in a tie right there. And so Wakefield stumbled a little bit, but again, I certainly think that this is a team that everyone has to keep their eyes on. Lots of great National District soccer being played this year. And moving on now, lots of other great games that have happened in the past few weeks to talk about in the region. And this Stonebridge-Langley game, I already talked a little bit about how Stonebridge has such an exceptional defense. You see some of the offense that they were able to generate against Langley. And Abdul Shaban, certainly a phenomenal player. He plays for a club team, and he was coming into that game having played 4 games pretty soon before that game, and so he was completely exhausted. And for Stonebridge, came out and scored very quickly for Coach May, got his team on the right foot, and then you see lots of his teammates stepping up. Mike Herndon, Mervyn Levy, and Tariq El Hamdani also scoring for Stonebridge. The lone goal for Langley being scored by Nima Kassiri. Stonebridge, again, a team that they're in the Liberty District. I feel like the Concord District teams get a lot of attention from people throughout the region, but Stonebridge has been very impressive. So I would certainly keep a watch on them. And then another team that hasn't been in my rankings, but McLean in the Liberty District. Lots of people definitely talking about McLean as well, their boys soccer program over there. So the Liberty District, lots of exciting soccer being played. Well, another game that I definitely wanted to talk about very quickly was this Lake Braddock South County game that happened on April 28th. You see what happened there with the 1-1 tie, and in a lot of ways it was just a complete and total heartbreaker for South County. They scored in the 17th minute off a goal from Max Cleese, you see there. And for most of the game, the defense being able to hold the Bruins, but then in the 77th minute, Emmanuel Kassem scored the goal, broke the hearts of South County. It was their senior day, so that was a really tough loss for them. And I've talked a lot about that defense and just how outstanding they've been. Their keeper, of course, one of the top players that I've been watching from throughout the region, had all those shutouts. So that was a huge, huge goal there that was scored by Lake Braddock. But South County, certainly one of the top teams in the Patriot District. And then finally moving on, I alluded to this Oakton-Robinson matchup. You see there, it ended in the tie, kind of a heartbreaker for Robinson in a lot of ways because, the Concord District standings are always neck and neck. This Oakton team snuck up on them. Lots of great defense obviously being played in this game. No score for either one of the two teams. But again, Robinson, they had that huge win over Westfield earlier in the season. So I think a lot of people are very excited, hoping to see a rematch. Could see more than one rematch between those two teams because they truly are two of the top in the region, two great coaches and all the athletes. Of course, Sean Mornon is one of the standouts in the region. Everyone enjoys seeing him play. So that's going to be a great matchup between Robinson and Westfield. At some point, hopefully throughout the season, we'll get to see that at least one more time. And then finally, Woodson squaring off, one more game here, Yorktown Westfield on April 30th. Westfield, you see they're getting the 2-0 win. As I said, Yorktown has somewhat had their struggles this year. The injuries have really been tough for them. Alex Herrera, of course, injuring the ankle earlier in the year. And so that's been a little difficult for them to rebound from, whereas Westfield, after that Robinson loss, has really had the momentum. And so that was a great matchup, certainly on paper, a great matchup, but Westfield, I feel like definitely had the edge. Just they've had the momentum all season long. Yorktown still trying to overcome those injuries, and certainly when you have injuries like that, it's not just that you're missing that player on the field, but also it messes up the chemistry, and so it's certainly harder for those teams to rebound when they're missing personnel that they're expecting to have. Well, now we'll move on and get to that last game that I was talking about, this West Springfield-Woodson matchup. Another one of our games of the week. This was actually a doubleheader. It was senior night for both the boys and the girls over there at Woodson. You see West Springfield coming out with the win 3-1. Now West Springfield, let's talk a little bit about this West Springfield team because they suffered a couple of losses earlier right before this game in the district. They played both South County and Annandale. They'd been on quite a roll and then they ran into both of those teams. Dennis and I talked about lacrosse and how there's so much parity and how the Patriot District is such a tough district in lacrosse, and the same is true for soccer because they suffered two big losses back to back to both South County and Annandale. Then they faced a Hayfield squad on their own senior night, righted the ship, and then going into that Woodson game, certainly had all that the Cavaliers could handle. It was senior night for the Cavaliers that night, was spoiled by West Springfield. So congratulations, that's a huge win for West Springfield. Well, that's it for the boys soccer report. Of course, lots more soccer to be played. The district tournament's coming up for boys soccer, so we will have the coverage of both the boys and girls soccer tournaments as they do begin to happen. We'll announce district players of the year for soccer as we did with lacrosse, but whenever we get that information, we'll have that available to you. But we are going to take one more quick break, and when we come back, we'll close out the show with our girls soccer segment. To the Fairfax Sports Report. Well, we have had an action-packed show tonight. We've gone through boys and girls lacrosse, boys soccer, college signings, and now to close out the show, as promised, we're going to talk a little bit about girls soccer. Of course, last week I had two of the coaches from around the region on the program talking about their teams. And now you see where the rankings stand after those big games we previewed for you last week. Robinson, wire to wire at the top. We talked about Chantilly being wire to wire for the girls in lacrosse. Robinson, wire to wire during the regular season on top there, 10-0-1. Of course, they had that tie to Woodson earlier in the season, and they have not faltered at all since. But the big news, you see it right there. You see the Stonebridge Bulldogs. I had them on my rankings earlier in the season. They dropped off. They struggled a little bit during the middle of the season. A lot of people scratching their heads. Christy Rodriguez and Lindsay Henry, two of the top players in the region. Coach Jane Windows over there doing a great job. And you see Stonebridge has had a great showing over the past few weeks. They've been completely outstanding. They've won 7 in a row by a margin of 25-3. So they have certainly caught my attention, particularly going into the Liberty District tournament. The Liberty District's so tough this year in girls soccer, but Stonebridge definitely, as I said, catching my attention, really jumped far up the rankings, but I feel like that's quite deserved to be in the number 2 position. Woodson there at 11-1-2. Again, I talked about that big tie that they started off the season with against Robinson, doing exceptionally well. We're going to talk about their big game of the week in just a minute. Chantilly dropping a little bit. Then you see West Springfield and McLean tied, little movement there, but still most of the teams that we've had in the rankings for throughout the year. Now, as I said last week on the program, we had 2 coaches on the show. We had Laura O'Brien from McLean. We had J2 Alicanis from West Springfield previewing the big games of the week. So now we're going to go through and talk about what happened in those games that we were talking about with the coaches. But first of all, you see one of the things that was motivating that big jump for Stonebridge. They beat Chantilly 2-0, the shutout for Stonebridge. Now you see there, though, I did want to highlight Jess Stillwell, the keeper for Chantilly. She had 13 saves, so a great showing for Jess Stillwell, but Stonebridge just too much to handle during that matchup, but a great game there. That's just one of the many games where Stonebridge is catching people's attention from throughout the region. Now moving on to another one of the games. This is the one that I previewed last week when I was talking to J2 Alicanis on the phone. Now you see there West Springfield, Woodson, the 1-1 tie. Lindsay Ottavio, she's been the standout for WT Woodson all year long, of course, stepping in for the injured Nikki Mercier, really carrying her team. You see in the 42nd minute there, she got on the board first, but Amalia Clayton with the very quick answer. The 44th minute, Amalia Clayton scores for West Springfield. No other scoring during the game, but one other player that I really want to highlight is the freshman goalkeeper for WT Woodson, Jessica Ferrari. She wasn't necessarily expecting to get the start, but she stepped in and had a great day. She ended up with 7 saves during the effort. And so again, not necessarily expecting the start. And as a freshman, that's a pretty big game to get a bit of your debut in, but she really gave a very good showing. I know Warren Williams has to be really excited about her future for Woodson. And then moving on to the final game, we also previewed this one last week on the program with Laura O'Brien. McLean playing Chantilly. Of course, Chantilly was coming off of that loss to Stonebridge. You see there, they righted the ship with the 2-0 win over an exceptionally strong McLean team. And Katie Menzie getting on the board first for the Chargers. She's known more for her assists. I think she's had around 20 in the past 2 years. She got on the board first. And then the freshman, Morgan Morris there with the insurance goal in the 77th minute, giving the Chargers a win over a great McLean team. Well, that was our mad dash throughout the region for soccer and lacrosse. Lots going on this spring, even despite the weather right now. So, but before we go, we want to again thank the folks that helped make this program possible. Our good friends at CCI Screen Printing, 703-978-0257. Don't forget, you can obtain copies of this program from www.pressboxvideo.com. Special thanks to Triple Edge Lacrosse for your endless summer of lacrosse. Don't forget to check out our website for news, notes, scores, and our Video Vault feature. Become a fan of the Fairfax Sports Network on our Facebook page. And don't forget to email us with your news, notes, and story ideas. Well, thanks for joining us this week. Please join us again next week for another episode of the Fairfax Sports Report.